Hello everybody and welcome to episode 29 of the WimLex podcast. We're delighted that Ynzo van Zanten is in our show today. Ynzo is the chief evangelist at Chocolonely. Chocolonely is the leading chocolate brand in the Netherlands. And they're aiming for 100% slave-free chocolate. So as their Choco Evangelist, Ynzo tells the story of Tony's around the globe. And he's in the WimLex show today, being interviewed by Willem, how that process takes place, how they are racing towards 100% slave-free chocolate. He's talking about how they do their brand building, marketing, and all kinds of cool stuff to grow the Tony's brand across the globe, especially in Germany and other European markets. This show is being brought to you by Spryker, debt agency, and is being hosted by Alexander Graaf from Germany, Lena Hekkeler from Stockholm, and Willem Blom from Amsterdam. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome at the WimLex podcast. We're delighted that we have Ynzo van Zanten today with us. Ynzo is the chief evangelist of Chocolonely. And Chocolonely is a Dutch-born brand of chocolate, a chocolate manufacturer. And they're actually on the way to produce slave-free chocolate. So Ynzo, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about Chocolonely?
Yes. Welcome to be here. I'm Ynzo. I'm the chief evangelist or the Choco Evangelist of Chocolonely. And it's almost, as you said in the introduction, but slightly different. Because they tend to say we don't make chocolate, but we want to make impact. So we're not a chocolate maker, but an impact maker. Because Barry Callebaut, the biggest chocolate maker in the world, makes our chocolate. And what we do is we work towards making all chocolate worldwide 100% slave-free. So working together with the industry, with governments, with consumers, with retailers, to really making sure that 100% slave-free chocolate becomes the norm in the world of chocolate.
And is slavery still a big problem in the
chocolate manufacturing industry? It is. In just Ghana and Ivory Coast alone. The problem is the biggest there. That's why I talk about these two countries. There's 2.3 million kids that work there on the cocoa farms, of which 90%, 2.1 million kids, work under illegal circumstances. Now that is a problem in itself, but there's also the very worst cases. Those are 30,000 that have been established by the Global Slavery Index figures of last year. That are actually subject to something that we call modern slavery. So those are people that are being forced to work outside of the family environment, kids that walk around with bags of cocoa beans that weigh 60 kilos per bag, kids that aren't paid for the work that they do, etc., etc. And that's it's a problem. It's a hidden problem in the cocoa industry because it's not very visible. And we think that's ridiculous in 2019 for a product that nobody actually needs, chocolate. It should be a treat for everyone. People who eat it, people who give it because it's the best present to give and to get, but also the people that actually make the chocolate or grow the cocoa beans that chocolate is made out of. And that's what we work hard for with 130 plus people that we have in our company now.
What I admire very much is that you've seen this problem in the industry and you've identified that and then brought it onto the kitchen table of almost any Dutch family. Yeah. You are a household name for many of us. Yeah. You guys are not only strong in identifying problem but also in building a great enterprise around it. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about the history and how you've been able to combine the good cause that you are they're pointing at to building an enterprise that is a household name here?
The history in a nutshell is that in 2005 there was a Dutch television show called Keuringsdienst van Waarde, which is an investigative journalistic program that looks into food mostly. And they ran across an article on page 12 of a newspaper somewhere about this issue. And they said, what? How can this be such a tiny article? How can this not be front page news? It's there in the industry. Doesn't anybody know about this? So they started investigating this. and realized the problem was much bigger than they had ever thought of before, and nobody knows about this. So, well, long story short, in the end, the television show, the journalist working for the television show, Teun van de Keuken, launched his own chocolate company, not having an idea that we would become market leader 15 years down the road, but mostly to really creating awareness. And that's still the number one step in our strategy nowadays, creating awareness, talking about this, communicating about this anywhere we can. So that's why we're on a festival like this. Also talk to people, spreading that word, and at the same time making great tasting chocolate in a way that we can show that a company can actually take responsibility for their full value chain. And that is the second step in our strategy. So we want to simply show that chocolate can be made in a different way, in a better way, in a more sustainable way, in a more social way. And do it in a way that we can actually inspire other chocolate companies to do the same. So instead of just being annoying all of the time, which we are, but not all of the time, and also inspiring other companies to show them that you can actually change your ways and take responsibility for the value chain in whatever industry. And in our case, that's the chocolate industry. So slowly but surely you see people joining our initiative and joining forces to actually make that world a better place. So that is the historical sense. And then the current situation is that what you see is that people get to us through three ways. One is the amazing tasting chocolate, because you can make an utterly sustainable bar where everything is right, but if it tastes crappy, people won't buy your bar again, and you're not making the impact that you want to make. So we have 23, 24, 25 plus recipes constantly. You never know how many, because we always have rotating recipes and seasonal recipes as well. And the other way is our branding, our communication, our identity, the way we actually talk to people through our packaging, through our bars, the shape of our bars even.
Could you elaborate that? Because I'm always curious what the shape actually is.
Yeah, so our bar is unequally divided. Okay. And we managed to hide the map of Western Africa in our bar to show the origin of our beans and the respect we have for the partner farmers that we work with to make this chocolate. So it's unequally divided, but it also has a reason, because that's annoying. You know, an unequally divided chocolate bar is annoying, let's be honest. But what it does is that it forces you to tell this story if somebody else sitting next to you asks you, why is that bar so unequally divided? And then you can explain that, well, the bar is unequally divided because it's the purest form to reflect the reality in the chocolate industry. For us, our bar is a communication vessel. So if somebody sits next to you, you tell this story. And the storytelling is the essential part in this brand, because we don't do any paid media. We've never done any form of paid media. Well, let's stick to IT slightly and social. We once supported a Facebook post with 40 euros. And then in the evening we said, nah, that's not very Tony's. So that was the only 40 euros media spent we've ever done. And we do a lot of earned media. So there's a lot of PR effort that we do because, well, people find it newsworthy. We are sometimes amazed that on nu.nl, an essential source online news, shows when we have launched a new recipe. We're like amazed. How can that be so newsworthy? But we love that because we reach consumers again. So the bars, the recipes that we have, the communication that we have, but also the mission that we want, the mission that we support. So that's 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide, period. And all three of the routes into our brand need to, in the end, add up to the mission. Because for us, it's about that. It's not about making chocolate. It's not about making a financial profit. For us, it's about reaching a mission of 100% slave-free chocolate. And when that's reached, we could say we've become obsolete, and then we'll do something else. So the three combined is what attracts people to our brand. And I think it's also because the way we communicate, the way we do marketing, it isn't a constant push in your face and look at us being amazing. It's much more creating a pull from the consumers themselves. And also that's what I also said in my talk. Therefore, we want to create this, or we're creating this consumer base of serious friends that are one step more active than just chocolate consumers. So these are people that actually buy our bars, dig into our mission, but also actively spread this mission amongst their family and friends.
So for the listeners, we are at a festival called Dep Festival where Ynzo just held a talk. So he's referring to that. We're also at an international festival. So I think people from the Netherlands, well, I don't think so. I'm sure people from the Netherlands know Tony Chocolonely. You're, as said, a household brand name here. And you've done amazingly well in the Netherlands. Maybe the best-selling chocolate brand in the supermarkets.
Yeah, we've become market leader last year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of listeners from Germany, and I think the majority of people who work at Dept are now German-speaking. So the Dutchies have been overtaken by the Germans.
Yeah.
How is your globalization strategy going? Because you said you want to make the full supply chain and the global chocolate market slave-free. How's that going in terms of convincing brands outside the Netherlands of your mission? And secondly, how well are you positioned to grow also in markets like Germany or the UK or the rest of the world?
It's a very current subject because normally it would be logical for a Dutch brand to, after Holland, go to Belgium, Germany, and then Scandinavia. We took the bold step to go to the US first. And why the US? Because we sometimes say that if you want people to listen to you, you have to make noise in the backyard. And the US is a backyard of a couple of the biggest chocolate brands. So we launched in Portland, Oregon, and we're now available nationally in the US at Whole Foods and many other stores. And then we launched into Belgium, and we're now available in Scandinavia, Finland, France as well, and also Germany. So we're growing fast in Germany, and on our website you can find the locations that we're being sold. So you see that
supermarket chain or the more.
I'm not sure about specifically what stores in Germany, but what we normally do is that we go through stores first where you see the conscious consumers coming in, and then stores where you have high footfall, so airports, train stations, etc. High street delicatessen stores, and then retailers indeed, and that can be quite quickly. For example, in the UK, we're now available in 1,500 Sainsbury's stores and Whole Foods in London. So yeah, what you see and what I find so interesting is that people are really picking up the idea of that you're able to indulge yourself while still doing something good for the world around you. So sometimes it feels a bit like Michelangelo making the David. He said it was always there. I just need to cut it out of stone, right? And I think this demand was always there, and we're just fulfilling the demand.
Also in other markets.
Yeah, also in other markets.
And how's the uptake in the US? How well are you?
Amazing. But the US is a huge country, and we're really proud of the fact that we're really available nationally now in the US. But it's like like conquering Europe, right? It's a continent in itself, and US is picking up amazingly. UK is really outperforming anything that we could have imagined. And honestly, if you would have asked me 3-4 years ago, where do you see yourselves, I would not imagine myself today being able to say that I can honestly think that this brand can be a global brand making a movement. And that is not important for us to become a global brand, but it is important to create traction amongst the industry, because simply said, if you're bigger, if you're more successful, people will look at you better and will start copying what you're doing. And that's exactly what we want.
And going back to that original phase, Teun van der Keuken came up with the idea. He made a television show about cocoa growth and found out about this problem. From a television show to build a successful company, there are many steps necessary, obviously. And I think Henk-Jan Beltman was one of the first involved. He's, I think, now the majority owner of Tony Chocolonely. How did he and Teun van der Keuken grow this idea into a successful company? Probably there were others who saw the problem as well, but you guys are the one who really convinced the general audience of the necessity.
Exactly, and it's what you see is that when Tony's had been around a couple of years and Henk Jan saw the brand and got involved and bought a minority share and later on a majority share, you saw that we really started picking up from there. So Tony's was established, which was great through Keuringsdienst van Waarde, where, by the way, to set something straight, Teun was the face and the initiator, but the people behind the scenes were the initial real shareholders. So those are the owner of the production company of Keuringsdienst van Waarde, Maurice Dekkers. And it was growing, but it wasn't being picked up as an enterprise as we're working it now. So I think what you saw is that in the beginning we were eager and we were radical in the sense that maybe we thought, let's get 100% market share in the world of chocolate and then we'll solve the problem, right? That was a bit of a dream maybe, and once we started combining it with, well, perhaps we can get 100% of the market to actually start copying what we're doing and inspiring them towards that way by really being entrepreneurial and bold and outspoken as well, but really combining the two. So when Henk Jan came aboard, this entrepreneurial spirit came on, and it was really about expanding, and we took big steps internationally, but also in Holland. And then we grew amazingly. I mean, we grew from a small company to more than 60 million euros per year revenue now. And when you become market leader in the Netherlands, then it becomes essential if you want to maintain that growth to go international. So that's the historic sense where Henk Jan came on board and really started running the company as a majority shareholder.
And you said that you have currently 130 people working at Tony's. What are their roles?
I can tell you it's hard to keep up nowadays. So I've had a long summer holiday.
Yeah.
So I think we should be around 130 people now,
yeah.
Of which we have about 10 in the US, about 10 in the UK, and the rest are based here in Amsterdam.
And what are they doing?
Well,
a lot, obviously. But, how does your organization look like?
Well, it's traditional and non-traditional at the same time. So we have a sales team, we have a marketing team, we have an operations team. I think what makes us different than other brands is that we also, for example, have an impact team that's really focused on the impact that we're making in Western Africa, but also in Europe and in America, etc., to create this traction. So we have an impact team that's really always working closely also with the cooperatives and the farmers in Africa, making sure that we're actually making the impact that we're aiming to make. And also, for example, a team that traditional companies would call HR, which we don't like, and we call them people and culture. Because we think maintaining this amazing work culture within Tony's is what makes us successful. And people love to work at and for a company that has this very strong purpose. And where purpose nowadays is a slightly overhyped term maybe, it's very clear and visible within Tony's that everybody is really working towards that mission of 100% slave-free chocolate, whilst at the same time making it as fun as possible to work at this company. So stay within the terminology, it's a very bitter subject that we're working to fix in the industry. So we always think, let's make it as fun as possible to work at that, within the company, outside of the company. So that's what distinguishes us from other companies, I think, and also the fact that we show that you can be financially successful without it being the goal, but it being an essential mean towards a goal. Because financial success is essential if you want to keep doing what you're doing. But it's not what we strive to be, right? Nobody gets born and thinks, in the end, I want to be financially successful. No, you want to make an impact. And that's what we're working on.
And if you compare, well, not similar companies to you, but also mission-driven companies like Ben & Jerry's, Vegetarian Butcher in the Netherlands, what you saw with them when they became a market leader in a country, or maybe 2 or 3 countries, that in the end they saw that the impact could be higher when they teamed up with a global company, multinational FMCG company, in this case Unilever. Yeah. Would you see that as a potential to reach your goals as well?
At Tony's, I've learned to never say never. I never thought we would open a factory, and we are. I never thought we would open a store in the Beurs van Baarle, and we did. I never thought we would become market leader, and we did. But I'm glad you put it that way, because some people are really skeptical sometimes about Ben & Jerry's being sold to Unilever, innocent drinks that are launched in the Benelux being sold to Coke, and indeed the Vegetarische Slager, the vegetarian butcher, being sold to Unilever. And I'm less skeptical, because if that indeed brings you closer to your mission, then you should keep in mind that the mission was the one thing that we started out at, right? So if that brings you closer to the mission, then I am not afraid of teaming up with a big player like, in that case, Unilever or anybody else, as long as it brings us closer to the mission.
And how's the conversation now going with these FMCG brands? Nestle, I think, is the largest chocolate maker in the world.
Well, no, Barry Callebaut and Cargill are the biggest chocolate makers.
Okay, but Nestle has famous
Nestle
brands like
is
Kit
big.
Kat.
Yeah, we're constantly in discussion with all of these brands.
How did they respond to your story?
Well, a famous bold Indian guy once said, first they ignore you, and then they laugh at you, and then they fight you, and then you win. And I think we rushed past them so quickly that we went from being ignored to winning. And you see sometimes they fight you, sometimes they laugh at you, but mostly I think they are open and inspired and also eager to work towards change. I mean, nobody in these companies goes to work in the morning and thinks, how can I mess up this world a bit more? But sometimes you need to point them to the facts. Sometimes you need to help them accelerate even quicker, and I'm putting this mildly. And that's our role as a brand, I think. But it's not there to be annoying. It's not there to become market leader. It's not there to sell chocolate. It's there to make an impact. So,
and do you see companies like Mondelez and Nestle transition quicker than maybe a couple of years ago?
Well, it's always hard to say what part we played in their changes and their aspirations. But all of these players now have programs in place. Some, in our opinion, more ambitious than others. Some being put into practice more than others. But it's always it's up to us to keep talking to them. And for example, we work together with Nestle in the International Cocoa Initiative to implement systems on the ground that are called the child labor monitoring and remediation systems. And yes, we sometimes then debate, okay, but we implement it at all our cooperatives and all our farmers. Why don't you also do that? So that's our role, to be an inspiration and to be cooperatives, but at the same time also keeping them on edge, and also sometimes criticizing them, but also high-fiving them. When Lidl Belgium 2 days ago announced that they are gonna have their chocolate made with fully traceable cocoa beans, where a higher price is paid for, we applauded it. We think that's great. That's amazing. And yes, let's keep in touch before we all start inventing the wheel by ourselves, and see how we can cooperate together to work towards that goal. Because in my opinion, it's ridiculous to think that you would need to find a USP based on basic human rights. Right? And let's all adhere to these basic human rights and then differentiate from there in packaging, in branding, in recipes, etc.
And talking about, for example, packaging, obviously you're very capable of tracing back the origin of the cocoa bean, and making trying to being plucked in a slave-free manner, which is great. I truly admire that cause. What we now see, and we had discussions at this festival as well, in how to green the full supply chain of different industries. For example, packaging, that could be in a way where you can recycle the package that's put around chocolate, or looking back at reducing the sugar intake for health benefits. Are these discussions underway within Tony's as well? And what is your stance on that?
Oh, definitely. So even though we're focused on making 100% slave-free chocolate the norm in chocolate, we definitely take our responsibility as a producer of food and of goods. So, for example, what we did last year, we started making our cocoa butter. So chocolate consists of a couple parts, but from a cocoa bean you have two processes. One, you make cocoa mass, and one you make cocoa butter. It comes from the same bean though. And then at the end you put it together. You add a bit of milk powder, sugar, soy lecithin, and then you have a chocolate bar. And now, sorry to my colleagues, I'm making this overly simple, but that's more or less how you make a chocolate bar. The production of cocoa butter we are now doing locally in Abidjan, which has a couple of benefits. One, we can now also buy the mid-crop from the farmers, which is normally a crop that isn't exported due to quality reasons, but we can use it to make cocoa butter. So this helps our farmers directly. And by producing our cocoa butter in Abidjan and Ivory Coast, we reduce our CO2 footprint on the cocoa butter by 50%. So that's one part. Two, we look at all these parts. So we want to have a climate neutral bar, hopefully before the end of next year, taking all these parts together. So as we touched upon earlier before the podcast, Just Dig It is, for example, our partner for CO2 compensation. Our packaging is bleach-free, unironed, FSC certified paper. We have the thinnest layer of aluminum foil, which is fully recyclable, in our bars, and we still need to have that to be able to reach the shelf life that we need to have for our bars. So it's also in that way to reduce food waste if you have a long enough shelf life. So it's not my personal favorite, but we need to have that aluminum foil still there. Now, what else do? We're looking into milk powder, because the majority, 60% of the CO2 footprint of our company is because of the milk powder in milk chocolate. So we're constantly looking how could we decrease CO2 footprint in that manner.
Could it be replaced? Because what we see now with a lot of baristas, Starbucks is introducing oat milk, for example.
Yeah, that's easier fluffy on your coffee than in a chocolate bar. So we're constantly looking at what we could do, but it's up till now we've never been able to use an equivalent and still reach the quality of taste that we have. And as I said earlier, you need to have this quality because otherwise people won't buy your bars again, and then you won't be able to make the impact. So it's a constant balance there. Same thing as you touched upon earlier, sugar. Yeah, how can we reduce sugar in our chocolate? Well, the darker you make the chocolate, the less sugar you have in it. So I would inspire listeners to eat dark chocolate. You also have a lower CO2.
Dark chocolates. We have them in the office, the blue ones.
Exactly, and it's great. Perfect because it also has a lower CO2 footprint because there's less milk powder in there, or no milk powder. No milk powder. Exactly. So it's a total reduction of CO2 footprint. But I'm a personal fan of milk chocolate. So, for example, sugar is one of those things that we're also looking at. How could we reduce sugar, making even a darker bar perhaps, but also perhaps using alternatives left and right. But that's hard. It's hard to find an equivalent that could still make this great tasting bars. And that's just one side of the story, because it's also about production. How can you still produce it properly? How can you still also inspire other companies to do the same with their chocolate, etc.
So you're describing some internal challenges to the future, which you're working on. What would you say from a more market perspective or consumer perspective are challenges that you're facing to reach your mission?
For internationalization is the big one now. Okay. So it's really growing big in the countries that we're represented now. If it's up to me, we're not constantly expanding into even more countries constantly, but also grow the countries that we're at now. Because it's also about being focused. So US, UK, Scandi, etc., etc. Maybe finding new markets, new propositions within chocolate. Because for us it's really focusing on chocolate. I mean, we could do 1,000 things. As Dutchies, we're crazy about chocolate sprinkles, hagelslag. It would distract us too much from making these bars and making that impact, because you want to have the highest cocoa count possible, because by having cocoa count in your chocolate you can make more impact for the cocoa farmers, and that's what we're about. So chocolate milk, chocolate sprinkles, great, but for now we're focused on the bars and on small bars and on the tiny Tonys, for example. So that's our focus now. Internationalization, I think, is currently the biggest challenge that we're facing. And also, obviously, the factory that we have announced that we're going to open within a couple of years' time, that's going to be a biggie too. That's a big boys league.
And I can imagine, because you're such a purpose-driven organization, that recruiting is not on top of the list of the challenges that you face?
Recruiting of people?
Yeah.
No, because we have the fortunate situation that people would love to work at Tony's. So when we always put our job openings on social media, and we tend to get enough people through there or through our own network. But it's true. I mean, it's hard to find the best people always, but I think for us it's slightly less hard than for many other companies.
Yeah. And what I saw in your LinkedIn job profile, you're the chief evangelist. You usually see evangelists at tech companies, say Werner Vogel, who is an evangelist at Amazon.
Yeah. You know who my inspiration was
for
this job title? I got to tell you. There's a guy called Guy Kawasaki.
Oh yeah.
That is an entrepreneur and a public speaker, and he was the evangelist of the Macintosh at Apple.
Yeah.
And I saw him speak a couple of times, and I thought that might be an interesting job title for me, Choco Evangelist.
And do you think all FMCG brands or consumer-facing companies need an evangelist?
Well, obviously to keep my own job in place, yes. No, but seriously.
What are the benefits and the advantages?
No, I think, you know what, for us it's about telling the story anywhere and everywhere we can to the right people on the right stages, on the right places internationally. Because we don't want to, we don't spend a single cent on paid media. And that's so for us it's about really telling the story, conveying the story. And I think if you manage to really tell your story properly and also in a way that I hope people leave feeling slightly empowered and enabled to make a change themselves. So I hope that, and I sometimes get these comments back on social media or LinkedIn to me, that a month later people say, seriously, I can't stand in front of a shelf and now not choose the right chocolate. And I'm not even asking these people to buy Tony's Chocolonely. I just ask them to make a proper judgment of what to buy and what decisions to make when buying products. Because in my opinion, people could say, well, we can vote every 2, 4, 6 years. But in my opinion, you can vote each and every single day with your shopping basket. Yeah, because if you don't buy crappy stuff, people will stop producing crappy stuff. I think it's that simple. Right?
And we're wrapping up this podcast because we always try to leave it to, say, 30, 35 minutes. My question is in your name. Your name is, well, Tony's. It's maybe derived from Teun, I can imagine. And the Chocolonely is part. So the lonely
battle in the chocolate industry. That's where we started off. And it's funny because so many people talk about Tony Chocolonely or Tony Chocolonely. Yeah. But it's actually Tony's Chocolonely. Tony, indeed, Teun, international name for Teun, and his lonely battle in the chocolate industry.
So will your name in the future change to something else? Because
it's already. I mean, it's a horrible name, but it's a lovely name too, right? It's impossible to pronounce for the majority of the people, but it's also distinguishing. You know, people talk about it, and then people stumble over it, and when you stumble over it, you stand still and you look at it. And I think that's the role of our name.
Great. Thank you so much for being in this podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.